podcast. I'm your host, Mari Reesberg. Over the past several years, I've combined my degrees in acting and somatic psychology to share my sustaining creativity techniques with performers. And now I've decided to share it with a bigger audience that includes you. I believe we are all creative, and this podcast is all about that. I'll be interviewing people from all backgrounds, ages, and creativity experiences to share just how creative we all are. Today, I'll be chatting with Redick, Assistant Dean at North Carolina School of the Arts, former Boston Ballet soloist, and currently pursuing an MBA at UNC. Please enjoy Redick. Welcome to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. Today, I'm chatting with Redick, Assistant Dean of North Carolina School of the Arts, former soloist for the Boston Ballet, and currently pursuing an MBA at University of North Carolina, Wilmington. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Mari. I'm really happy to be here and talk with you and your audience and see where our conversation leads.
I cannot wait to get into the world of creativity with you because I suspect you have lots of experience in everything we talked about before we hit record. But before we get there, why don't you take a couple of minutes and just let our listeners know a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Great. Well, thanks. So I am actually a third generation ballet dancer. My grandmother was a prima ballerina in the Hungarian National Ballet. She escaped during the Hungarian Revolution with my mother. They came over, started ballet school here on the East Coast. Mm-hmm. And so that's how I found myself in ballet, going to classes with my mom. I did most of my training with my mother and then just ended up in the profession eventually. Did 20 years as a professional ballet dancer. Wow. Before turning to teaching, and which is where I am now at University of North Carolina School of the Arts, where I'm the assistant dean of dance there. And I've been here about 12 years now, teaching and mentoring young dancers, but also other artists. Filmmakers and students from stage management and working with musicians, and then also working with professional dancers and companies around the world.
Oh my goodness. You don't often meet third generation ballet dancers. So yeah. That is very exciting, and to have that experience. And I'm curious, because of your mom and your grandmother having also been ballet dancers, was that just like the family business that you were getting into, or was there some joy and desire to be a part of the ballet world for yourself too?
Well, I think a lot of it is it's a bit of the family business. And so as a young person, and I should mention my brother also, he's 3 years older. I have an older brother who also danced. And so we found ourselves in the ballet studio all the time with my mom as she was teaching. So we had aptitude, as certainly me as a younger person had a lot of energy as a kid. So my mom was happy to put me in classes and let me, bounce around the studio and then learn, actually went through methodical training. Yeah. So that's how I found myself in dance. And I've always been very physically active. To this day, I continue to not dance necessarily, but other outside physical pursuits.
Nice. Well, when you think of creativity, what does it mean to you to be creative?
Yeah, and I find creativity in so many areas of my life, and you could certainly argue it's every area of your life, but I really think about when I'm teaching, for instance, there's a lot of creativity that happens in the classroom when you're working with students on a daily basis, and not just in their training, but when we go into anything that deals with repertory, meaning concerts we're working on, material that we're going to perform. So I think it's important that we find creative ways to impart our information to our dancers and to people. So I find a lot of creativity within that. Certainly when I'm coaching dancers on a particular thing, and I've been brought in by professional companies around the world to work with their professional dancers. So how do you modulate your experience and your information to kind of match where they are? So there's so much creativity that goes within that with working with other people. with other dancers to help them find their own creative path and also their authentic voice. How do you help
Mm.
them find their authentic voice, which is so important that we are nurturing and mentoring these young people, artists,
Mhm.
um, individuals to find their authentic way in their lives.
Yeah, I love the finding your authentic voice. And speaking of, my voice is having a moment. Um, when you work with someone around authenticity or finding your voice, what are the ways that you kind of, how do you talk about authenticity or authentic voice? Because in dance, it's through movement and, you know, that piece, which is different than someone who sings or speaks on stage.
Sure, it's similar but different,
Hmm.
right? I mean, I want when I'm working with a dancer, I want them to find the ways to embody a step or a movement from the inside out, right? Versus just trying to
Mm,
execute and muscle through something. I want them to
yeah.
think more organically through their body. How do you initiate those steps? Where does it come from and where are we going? So that is a way for them to find their own pathway, right? Because I don't know
Hmm.
what it feels like to be in another person's body in that way, right? I
Yeah.
don't know how they're feeling on a particular day, certainly not when they go out on stage. I have no idea what the steps feel like for them. So how do I connect with them to help them connect with themselves,
Hmm.
to work through the embodiment of what they're doing.
Yeah.
Um, if we're doing something more narrative where there's a character that they're trying to portray,
Hmm.
certainly we use a lot of imagery. There's a
Mm.
lot of discussion about what is the story happening here? What is going on in this person's life? And how do I connect that to how do I help them connect it to things in their lives that will make it authentic to them, which will make it
Yeah.
real for them? Because if it's not real
Mm.
for them, the audience will smell that a mile away, right? Uh,
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, they're gonna see something that's put on and fake, but if someone's really
Mhm.
in the moment and really feeling that for themselves, they're going to find a way to express themselves and do it in original and unique way that only
Mm.
they can.
Yeah. No, I love that explanation. Thank you for sharing finding an authentic voice. I think it's so important. And I'm so curious. You're currently working on an MBA. You have master's degree in dance. This whole piece, but how did you go from one to the other? How do they bridge for you?
Yeah, so I've been very fortunate that early in my teaching career, I was tapped for leadership to
Mm.
run schools.
Hmm.
I've run 3 schools before I
Oh.
came here. I'm an
Hmm.
assistant dean here, and I've been interim dean here as well. So I've run this school. So undergirding all of that creative and artistic pursuit is the business model.
Hmm.
Is the not just artistic enterprise, but the business enterprise that makes the machinery go.
Yeah.
So it's something I've always wanted to pursue and have more formal education in that direction. And so that's what led me into pursuing the MBA. And I think that's been really helpful. It puts you in a different mindset in terms of looking at the art form and connecting with individuals in a different way. How do you have meaningful conversations with people who don't really understand dance and art in a
Hmm.
certain way? Obviously, it's not to demean or
Yeah.
diminish someone's viewpoint, but how can I speak their language in a different way? And certainly
Mm.
when we're talking about funding and fundraising, it's really important that you understand how to speak the language of
Yeah.
a balance sheet, for instance.
Absolutely. So, how important, in your view, is it that artists have an understanding of the business of art?
It's got to be one of their top priorities. I think as young people or as people in general, we all
Hmm.
need a better financial education. I'm constantly reading books in that direction. How can I better educate myself? Which gives you more freedom, right?
Yeah.
Ultimately, managing your finances or managing your business gives you more freedom to pursue the areas that you wish to pursue. So young
Hmm.
dancers, whether they're whether they're just going to be a dancer or they're going to be a choreographer, they need to understand the fundamentals of finances. And if you're running a company, you sure as heck should understand how all the pieces are put together to be able to produce the art at a certain level, at whatever level you're pursuing.
Yeah. Do you have any experiences where before you kind of stepped into the business side of things that maybe it was a little more challenging to understand the nuance of business?
I mean, it's always a learning process. I can say that I've been fortunate that my mom had a school for 50
Mm.
years, a ballet
Mhm.
school.
Yeah.
And so running a school, you kind of through osmosis start understanding, the need for enrollment and tuition and fundraising and all these things. So that's really where I came at it from.
Mhm.
And then I was fortunate when I was at Boston Ballet, and transitioning from my performing career to my teaching career, I
Mm.
did move into running one of their satellite schools. And while I was running that satellite school, this is a huge organization. Boston Ballet School is probably the largest dance school in North America.
Mm.
I
Mhm.
was fortunate to be in leadership where I learned all of the administrative ins and outs of how to really manage the school on a larger scale.
Yeah. So on the job training for sure.
Definitely on the job training, right?
Yeah.
This is, certainly Google was there, but not to the level that now we have AI, right? Type something in and
Right.
it'll spit out a business plan for you if you ask the right prompts.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, when you think of your own experience with creative pursuits and the
Mhm.
challenges that inevitably arise, how do you navigate your own creative challenges and what are some of those that you've faced?
Yeah, I think my own creative challenges. I'm going to go back to a big project that I did over during the pandemic, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we created a new production of the Nutcracker,
Mm-hmm.
um, and it was the pandemic, so we had to do it on film, and so it was a monstrous project. It included all the schools of the arts here at UNCSA.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at that, I really had to scaffold and structure how I tackled each of the issues that needed to happen, right? We had the choreography, we had the film crew, we had lighting, we had to move a whole stage into a sound stage. So there was a whole bunch of logistics that happened. So in terms of approaching that very creative project, which was so fun to do, there's the logistics. And for me, I like to think very analytically about how do you navigate all those things so that when we get in front of the camera and cameras rolling and the dancers are under the lights, how do we make that experience the best, produce the best possible product we could?
Mm-hmm.
So, for me, I'm always trying to break things down and figure out what can I do to help this next thing? How can I kind of problem solve in advance and
Mm-hmm.
structure things so that we can just go and do the creative project that we need to? So, a lot of planning, a lot of planning, and a lot of planning.
Yeah, sure. Were there any moments where you thought, oh man, I need way more planning than I even anticipated?
Well, no, I mean, planning, I felt very prepared in that respect,
Yeah.
but there's always things that come up. And we definitely had major issues in terms of hitting certain deadlines with certain
Mm.
departments,
Mm-hmm.
which is inevitable, right? When you're doing
Yeah.
something, a very large creative endeavor, you're always going to hit roadblocks or problems or real life things come up. So we have to do the workaround, right?
Sure.
How can we be creative with the workaround? We lost a whole weekend of filming, and that was
Oh,
like, okay, we have 4 weekends of filming. We've got to achieve this. We
yeah.
lost one of them. That's 25% of our time. So, how can you be creative in that space and keep your calm, keep your composure? It's
Mm-hmm.
people are people and they're very human and
Yeah.
mistakes happen for all kinds of reasons. So,
Right.
so we worked around it. So I think just being very flexible,
Yeah.
in terms in terms of figuring out the problem solving there.
You strike me as someone who has draws inspiration from a lot of different arenas where you have your hands in so many different places. But in your life today, who or what inspires you?
Oh, that's a great question. Who or what inspires me? Well, I do have to come to one of my mentors is Susan Jaffe, who's also a friend. She was the former dean of the school here.
Mm-hmm.
She's now the artistic director of American Ballet Theater.
Mm-hmm.
So I keep in contact with her, but I follow and see what she's doing with this incredible company in New York
Mm.
City,
Yeah.
with these incredible dancers creating this incredible art. So I really I draw a lot of inspiration from that. I certainly also draw inspiration from the books that I read. I
Mm.
try to read as many things in so many different ways. I find a lot of interesting things on YouTube and TikTok that
Mhm.
kind of inspire me, right? You know, very easy to go down the rabbit hole that way. Um, and I also, every day, the daily inspiration is working with dancers. I love
Mm.
working with dancers and seeing how they grow. Certainly, there's so many days where you can see their frustration about that kind of the wall that they hit, but then you help them, break through those moments, and that's really inspiring to see. And then
Mhm.
certainly finding new solutions for each individual
Yeah,
dancer is inspiring to see them achieve their goals and get better and improve and grow in their lives.
absolutely. What is it like as, I mean, as a teacher, you really do see that progression of someone coming in and there is that phase and stage of growth and
Mhm.
exponential growth, which can be really difficult and challenging, and plateaus. And for individuals who find themselves on a plateau of growth, how do you kind of work with that or keep going, navigating that phase?
Well, I think I get this all the time from dancers, it's like, oh, this is not getting better. I don't feel I don't not getting stronger. I'm not improving. And I think when we hit those moments, I think it's important to always go back and say, just focus on the fundamentals.
Mm.
Understand that your growth is incremental. So
Hmm.
even if it's a millimeter better, right? Even if it's just like just a little bit better than yesterday. And it doesn't have to be even better than yesterday, but just know the improvement happens and it doesn't happen all at once or when you want it to happen. So I think that that is the best way to help them find the patience in the process and just have trust and faith that the process will carry them through to their goals. And
Mm.
for me as an educator or as a mentor of these young people, it's important that we build a really good rapport where they
Mhm.
feel that they trust my viewpoint, they trust me to help them. Um,
Yeah.
and obviously that is with any relationship. You want to have that good open dialogue, but that trusting foundation so that once you find that, then it does alleviate some of the frustrations that dancers do go through.
Hmm. Yeah. And in your personal life, what are those pieces that you find you need to remind yourself of
Mm.
this as you're going through it?
Yeah, that's that's a great one, right? Because there are those things. I think it's always just to go back and take my dog for a walk and
Mm.
get off of screens and just connect
Mm.
with being present in the moment and just kind of
Mm.
reflecting
Hmm.
without distractions, even
Yeah.
though my dog can be a distraction. Um,
Sure.
but I think it's important that we kind of find ways to recharge, and that's how I
Mm.
recharge. It's one of the areas I recharge in, and kind of think through things in a quiet space.
Hmm.
With limited distractions, being in nature is always helpful to me.
Yeah.
Also do that in the gym too. When I go to the gym, put my AirPods in and just kind of disconnect for a while and just focus on being
Mm.
present and going through my routine, so that I can, let my mind wander a bit. And so that
Mm.
always helps me recharge versus kind of spinning around on the same things, right?
Hmm.
We can get very stuck on a problem.
Yeah.
And, and then usually you're thinking about something that's way out in a different universe completely. And I was like, oh, the solution is so easy. I just needed to change my perspective about what it is I was
Yeah.
thinking about.
Yeah, I hear a lot of mindfulness in what you're talking about. Do you have training in mindfulness as well? And do you utilize that? Or is this just something that
you have discovered really helps and supports your process?
Well, I think that's just something I've discovered through, through experience and just through
Mm-hmm.
doing. I don't have any mindfulness training necessarily. I've certainly done a number of different practices, and that
Yeah.
probably all informs that viewpoint. But I think being on stage for 20 years, um, you have to find ways to be reflective of
Mm.
how you meet the moment. And by that I
Mm.
mean come to every performance. Um, in a fresh way, even when your body might not be very fresh. Your body might be absolutely exhausted. And so figuring out how do I navigate this performance or this week of performances or
Mm-hmm.
this particular role. And so I like to think about, how do you just have that quietness right before you go on stage
Yeah.
and and just kind of gather your strength and be able to execute, right, and perform for the
Mm-hmm.
audience. And so I think a lot of that has informed a lot of the way that I move through my professional life now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was struck when you were talking about, needing to still perform or be on stage when your body isn't feeling
Yeah.
100%. So when your physical body is your your business, your tool, and it's not feeling at 100%, how do you support yourself and navigate that?
For me, the way that I found is I try to, you try to gather your energy and find that quietness.
Mm-hmm.
What is that? Is that taking a nap? Is that just turning on some music and closing your eyes and just trying to breathe and
Mm-hmm.
center yourself? I think being very centered before a performance is very, very important for dancers. So
Mm-hmm.
you can come to the stage and to the audience and to the dancers you're working with and everyone you're working with, not just dancers, because you have a production crew that's also there to support
Sure.
you. How do you be present for that 30 minutes or 2 hour,
Mm-hmm.
evening of performances? So I think certainly fueling the body, right? Making sure
Mm-hmm.
you're supporting yourself through, proper nutrition is always good. And proper nutrition doesn't necessarily mean the healthiest foods in that moment. It might mean
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
maybe I need something, that is not the healthiest thing, and that's going to get me through. I don't know. Whatever it might be, we all have our own successful strategies about coming to challenging moments in our life. And I think you come across those so frequently as a performer.
Right.
It's every performance is the most important performance. Every audience is the most important audience.
Mm-hmm.
And so really trying to preserve yourself in the best way possible is what you need to do. And so I
Mm-hmm.
understand, you understand that the bubble that happens around the artists in
Yeah.
general. We
Mm-hmm.
we it's very easy to vilify, maybe some of the Hollywood actors of being in those bubbles.
Mm-hmm.
But I certainly understand where they're coming from, right? There's an expectation from the audience on a huge scale that they
Sure.
have to come to those roles in a certain way and produce in film, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I get it, how you have to kind of retreat within yourself to find that way to give back.
Yeah.
It's a challenge as an artist.
Absolutely. It absolutely is. And one that I think people who haven't experienced it have a really hard time understanding and navigating for themselves. But what I hear also is like finding not only your authentic voice in performance, but also in your everyday life to take care of yourself and how you go about doing that as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of self-care that goes into all of that. And
Hmm.
um, probably a hard lesson for anyone to learn and to really value and understand, but certainly for younger people where they are immortal, right? When you're in your 20s, you're
Sure.
immortal and you
Yeah.
think you can go out guns blazing at 150%. They think they can go that hard just
Yeah.
indefinitely, but at the end of the day, self-preservation and taking care of yourself is so important to come to your art, your craft, your profession in the best way possible for the people around you. And whether those people around you are coworkers or artists that you're working with, or your family or your friends, right? We self-care is really important for all of those things to allow you to, find your best creative self.
Absolutely. And sustain it to that longevity piece is so important. Absolutely. Well, Jared, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. I have one last question. What does it feel like in your body to be creative?
Different now than it was as a performer, but it's still those dancer days linger. And I'm so grateful for that. But to be creative in my body, it is always there's something movement. There's something moving. I have to be in motion, is what I should say. For me, that's what creativity feels like, right? If I'm just thinking, I tend to, you can't see it because I'm on camera now, but I'm using my hands, right? Like I speak with my hands because it comes so natural to me to do that, to be in motion in some way. On the flip side, to be creative to me in my body sometimes means just stopping and just breathing and just having a restful moment as well. So I think I go back and forth between those two things. Probably, I wish it was 50-50 in terms of being quiet and thoughtful, but it tends to be probably like a 70-30 split there, that I'm more active in terms of that. I like to be pacing around and making notes on my phone or something like that if I'm being creative in that way.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. If people want to learn more about the work you have and things out in the world, how could they go about doing that?
Always great to follow me on Instagram or find me on LinkedIn. I also have a website as well, jared-redick.com. You can find me there. So any one of those three places. And if you'd like to speak further or need consulting work in dance in general, just reach out to me, DM me. I'm happy to get back to you.
Awesome. Well, I will put those links in show notes so people have easy access. And thank you again for taking the time to chat with me. I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation.
Thanks so much for having me, Mari. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. We'd love to keep in touch, so follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We are at Sustaining Creativity. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Tag your friends and family so they can listen too. We love to hear from you, so leave your reviews, comments, and questions. Check out our website, sustainingcreativity.com, for upcoming offerings and creativity coaching. Tune in Tuesdays for our next episode. And remember, with creativity, anything's possible.